Now boys, if you remember the launch of Warzone Mobile, then you'd know that the game launched on March 21st, 2024 in an absolute abysmal state, which effectively made it the most uninstalled mobile game in 24 hours. The game was so bad that phones actually overheated and burnt many players who were playing the game at the time. And with people leaving the game in droves, those very same people were looking for other games that would scratch that Warzone itch. And one such game that just so happened to release on the exact same day as Warzone Mobile is Bloodstrike. And players absolutely loved it. Well, for the most part, it's a fast-paced, hero-focused battle royale game with an emphasis on fast, high-octane engagements, which favors a more arcade-like experience as opposed to something entirely realistic. Now, if you guys remember, I used to play Bloodstrike quite a lot on my channel, and when I say a lot, it was pretty much all I played at one point. But that aside, to better explain the game as a whole, we're gonna break this video down into 4 core pillars: the art style, the characters, the gameplay, and finally, we're gonna talk about some of the negatives, because trust me, there are plenty. Now, Bloodstrike's art style sits somewhere between stylized and somewhat realistic. The environments, the weapons, and overall world design lean toward a modern military aesthetic, but they are simplified to maintain readability during fast-paced combat. The key priority here is clarity. Visual noise is heavily reduced compared to most modern shooters, textures are cleaner, and important elements like enemies, gunfire, and movement stand out immediately, which gives the game an arcade-like sharpness, where everything is easy to track even at high speed. Now, as for color usage, it's more controlled and functional here. Backgrounds tend to use more neutral and natural colors, while interactive elements and combat feedback are more vibrant, which helps players instantly identify threats and actions. Lighting and effects are also tuned for performance and visibility rather than cinematic realism. Explosions, muzzle flashes, and hit indicators are clear and punchy, but not overly complex, reinforcing fast reaction times. The style is built around competitive readability and speed, resulting in a look that feels somewhat modern and tactical to a certain degree, but is intentionally simplified to support constant, fast-paced gameplay. Now, if I were to sum up the characters in Bloodstrike, I would describe them as purpose-built operators with an emphasis on speed, clarity, and immediate function. Now, visually, they follow a modern military foundation, but are stylized and simplified enough to fit the game's fast pace. Some outfits include tactical gear like vests, utility belts, but with cleaner silhouettes and less clutter than a realistic military simulator. This means each character remains easy to read even during the most chaotic gunfights. Their design prioritizes recognition far more than realism. Now, compared to more grounded shooters, the designs are slightly exaggerated, but not to the point of full fantasy. That way they stay anchored in a somewhat believable combat aesthetic. There's also a clear emphasis on functional identity rather than a deep narrative presence, so characters feel less story driven and more like purpose-built combat units, where their visual design communicates how they are meant to operate within the match. Like take Nova for example. In order to not get taken out by her own gas, she wears a gas mask, which makes sense from a design perspective. Or even Ethan, if you noticed, I'm pretty sure he has a cybernetic body, so it would make sense that one of his abilities is a power slide, because only someone with a cybernetically enhanced body should be capable of that. Bloodstrike's characters represent a hybrid between tactical soldiers and arcade operators. They are grounded enough to feel familiar, but streamlined and stylized enough to support speed, clarity, and constant engagement. Now, Bloodstrike's gameplay is a high-frequency combat loop driven by rapid engagement. At its core, it minimizes downtime and condenses the traditional battle royale structure into a continuous cycle of fighting, resetting, and re-engaging combat. Players are rarely removed from the action for extended periods of time, which keeps engagement levels consistently high. Now, the thing is, that statement is very true for Shutter Island, which is a relatively small map, but it's a very different story when talking about Deserted Valley or Skyline Beach, which are both pretty big maps compared to something like Shutter Island. But what defines Bloodstrike is the lack of extended punishment. Mistakes don't remove players from the experience for very long, which shifts the focus from cautious survival to constant participation and aggressive play. This creates a system where momentum is everything and it's constantly shifting. Players who string together meaningful engagements build control over the match, while those who tend to hesitate or fall behind get caught up in the crossfire. Decision making becomes faster and the overall experience feels compressed into short bursts of high intensity engagements, and the result is a gameplay loop centered around continuous action, rapid recovery and sustained pressure instead of the slow build up or one life high stakes most people are used to with other battle royale games. Now the modes that I think generate the most traffic is of course battle royale and squad fight. Sure, there are other modes, and yes, Bloodstrike recently just added search and destroy, even though squad fight is just search and destroy without the bomb, effectively making search and destroy useless before they even thought about adding it. And I would argue most people prefer squad fight because, no offense, most Bloodstrike players are too brain dead for search and destroy, and I would even argue that those very same players are too brain dead for even squad fight because they all just run around like a bunch of headless chickens, dude. I don't know if I'm the only one who experiences this, but my teammates, for some reason, 9 times out of 10, they kinda always suck. Now boys, there's plenty of things wrong with Bloodstrike, but let's take this one step at a time and start with the monetization. Now it's not Diablo Immortal levels of bad, but it's still pretty bad here. And I guess it kinda makes sense because the same people responsible for Diablo Immortal's monetization are the same people behind Bloodstrike's monetization, which is, you guessed it, NetEase. And of course this game has loot boxes because why wouldn't it? But this version of loot boxes is by far the most outrageous I've seen in a shooter game, hands down. Because if you wanna buy an ultra skin, for example, this is the probability of you getting the skin in one spin. But don't worry, it gets worse, because if you want to get an eternal skin, which is a tier above ultra, this is the probability of you getting that skin in one spin. But don't worry, it gets even worse, because if you want to get an evo skin, which is a tier above eternal, this is the probability of you getting that skin in one spin. Now you probably sat there like, why are the probabilities so dog shit? Well, that's because these pools are full of random garbage designed to artificially lower your probability of actually getting the skin you want. That way players keep pulling for the skins they want, and NetEase ends up making way more money, which is so fucking predatory, I'm not gonna lie. If their skins just had a set price, this problem wouldn't exist, but if NetEase did that, they wouldn't make as much money. So of course they're not gonna change it, even though it's scummy as fuck, because they are making far too much money with just loot boxes. Now some people cope and say, but in the Eternal and Evo stash, if you jerk off hard enough and keep pulling, even if you don't get the skin from pulling, you can just use those tokens that you get and just buy the skin with that. Which I don't know if you realize it yet, but that doesn't suddenly make the situation any better. This monetization model is extremely predatory, and I don't know how anyone could defend it. Like genuinely, it baffles the mind the lengths some people go to just to defend this shit. Now the next issue I'd like to cover is the optimization, because holy shit, it just keeps getting progressively worse with each update. Like just look at the shit. Now mind you, this is my PC setup, like it's not anything crazy, but it's more than enough to run Bloodstrike with no issues based off their own system requirements. Like when this game first launched, there was this joke that if you had a Samsung smart fridge, it could probably run Bloodstrike. That's how well optimized this game used to be. These days, however, that's no longer the case. Instead of fixing the game, they've opted for pumping the game with more ridiculous skins. Like if the game didn't say this was a skin for the UMP45, I'd honestly have no idea what this was supposed to be for. And instead of optimizing the game, we gotta make those titties bounce, baby. Because according to the developers, a fast-paced first-person shooter definitely needs something as useless as jiggle physics. My brother in Christ, they just keep pumping this game with more Guna bait, which is just insane to me. Vehicles in this game are a fucking L, and it's easily the worst out of any game I've ever played. Like at this point, vehicles should just be removed entirely. That is how genuinely bad they are here. Heat detection in this game is fucking atrocious, holy shit.
Damn! What? He's not dead? Bro, I hit him for 250.
Like, imagine hitting someone for 250 and somehow, through some miracle, by the grace of God, in a fucking video game, they still survived. Makes that make sense. Then there's the matchmaking. Holy shit, the matchmaking in this game is so dog shit. Holy shit, dude, it's so bad. Dude, it's so bad it had me fucking stuttering reading this shit. It is pure garbage, because I shit you not, you could straight up AFK your way to Legend and Mythic rank. That is how dog shit it is, because there are players in Legend and Mythic that have absolutely no business being in Legend and Mythic, and because the matchmaking is so genuinely dog shit, more often than not you end up with a team like this. One other thing, why isn't Storm Peninsula a BR map? I genuinely don't get why it hasn't been made into a BR map yet. Like, these developers had time to make a whole new map, which, mind you, that map is completely half-assed, instead of just releasing Storm Peninsula for Battle Royale. Because much like Deserted Valley, Storm Peninsula is one of the oldest maps in the game, and it's still locked behind Squad Fight. And now you can rarely even play that map there, because Squad Fight has effectively become a clusterfuck of damn near every single map in the game on rotation. Why is every single map in Squad Fight? That makes no fucking sense. Shutter Island should have never been a Squad Fight map. Deserted Valley should have never been a Squad Fight map. Skyline Beach should have never been a Squad Fight map. I can't believe I'm the only one saying this shit. Just keep BR maps out of Squad Fight. Squad Fight should have its own dedicated maps, because I already play those maps in BR. I don't want to have to play them in Squad Fight as well. That is how you burn out your player base way quickly than normal, because they have to consume the same fucking content over and over and over in more than just one mode. That shit fucking sucks. But yeah, that's Bloodstrike. Now, is it an objectively bad game? No, not really. However, it is clear where their priorities lie. But what do you guys think about Bloodstrike? Have you played it before? And if not, would you actually give it a try? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video.